Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Ohio State call-in show. Zach and I here again to talk to you everything going on Ohio State. Zach, how we doing tonight?
Good, man. I although I made the mistake of looking at the comments section of the Indiana show after we talked about it. I'm like, man, I
I wasn't trying to tell you to go look at it. I was just saying
I
you got a whole lot of comments. Great
I
job.
did. I did. It's not good, man. Uh,
If you're not aware, Zach and I do a Big Ten podcast in addition to this, and he decided to question a little bit of Indiana's dominance against Michigan State this weekend, and
to to which I then said, as an Ohio State guy, I'm terrified to play them. That seemed to get lost in
yeah, they didn't hear
that.
that. They didn't hear
Yeah.
that at all.
Yeah. They're like, you're just moving the goalposts. I'm like, no, I just thought Michigan State sucked. That's all. I still think Ohio State's going to struggle against Indiana. Like, what? Anyway, sorry. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. As we were waiting, we got our first caller already, Zach. So we're
Yo,
excited
let's
to bring in
go.
our very first caller of the night. As long as I can get the right label up here, bear with me for just a second. Tyler, there you are.
Hey,
I think this
Tyler.
is the wrong one, but go ahead, Tyler. How we doing tonight?
I'm great, JR.
I'll get the right uh, layout here in just a second. But what's your thoughts after the game this weekend against Penn State? That's obviously the thing everybody is thinking about.
Honestly, JR, I think this is a win that this team really needed, personally. I don't know what it is with this team. The past two, leading up to this game, it didn't feel like this team was actually that close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you feel like there was more juice and more brotherhood kinda in this one than before?
Honestly, this is the most juice I've and brotherhood I've seen in a while.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I feel that way. And maybe you guys have an idea, but doesn't it feel like this team has not been uh, the defense doesn't feel like they've actually come to the offense and say, "Hey, get let's get this win," or vice versa. Offense, uh, defense, we need you. It's it. It feels like this team actually really desperately needed this for a long, long time.
Yeah, I felt like there was some doubt, and I felt like the thing that put it over the top in this game was the play of the offensive line, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they definitely had their struggles with pass pro and stuff like that, Donovan Jackson, but I mean, it was his very first start, so I'm not going to knock him too much for that. But I mean, do you agree, Zach? Did you feel like it was the offensive line that was kind of the catalyst for that?
I thought offensive line, and I think as much as Will Howard made some back-breaking mistakes,
Hmm.
his emotion and
Mm-hmm.
like he will like I think one of the biggest sequences in the beginning of the game, he throws the pick six, then marches right down the field for a touchdown.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
throws a beautiful throw to Emeka, by the way. But like
It
the
was
offensive
it was
line was
pinpoint
great too.
accurate.
Yeah. I thought that was a huge tone setter for them. That he
Hmm.
was able to come back from that. But I agree with you too, JR. I think the offensive line and Tyler, you mentioned the brotherhood. That the sequence at the end where the defense stopped him at the one, and then the offense basically called ball, like they called game, and just ran it down their throats 11 straight times. I I think that I mentioned this on Twitter, and I'd be curious to hear your thought on it, Tyler. But
Hmm.
I felt like that was the most important drive, maybe of the Ryan Day era, because of all the questioning. It's certainly not the prettiest or the best, but
Hmm.
maybe like with context, the most important drive that I've seen them play under Ryan Day.
Honestly, I agree. I think we needed this. I think it because I think this game was a breath of fresh air for last week. It was a
Mhm.
where I think all the Oregon game and the Nebraska game have been a lot of pent up frustration that have been brewing for a long for a while. And what do they say about diamonds, right? You diamonds are created through a lot of pressure, and
Mhm.
you either through pressure you crumble or and that you turn into a diamond. And I'm after this win, I was like this. There's something there's something special about this team. I can't put my finger on. I was like, there's something that I don't know if JR, I don't know if you felt it. Zach, I don't know if you felt it, but I was like, there's something that's different about this team.
Yeah, I mean that game in particular, that was emotionally, juice-wise, that was more than anything we've seen out of a Ryan Day team since maybe
Yep.
2019. I do think there was quite a bit of juice on
Mhm.
that team and a good amount of emotion and stuff like that. But I forget who said it. I want to give him credit, but somebody said after the game, they said the biggest thing for Ohio State to learn now, especially Will Howard, is the difference between emotion and passion. Because Will Howard plays with a whole lot of emotion, and that's awesome.
Mhm.
But if you can translate that into passion, I feel like that just kind of takes it to another level. And I'm not knocking Will Howard when I say that. Please don't
That's
hear
fair.
me,
That's fair.
but I feel like that's kind of the next step for this team. We saw the emotion, we saw the juice. If they can turn that more into a passion where you see it every single game and
Hmm.
not just
Yeah.
in the big moments, I feel like that's going to be the next step for this team that we saw against Penn State. Did you feel the same, Zach?
Yeah, I think because the reality, and I think you alluded to this, Tyler, this really should have been like a 34-6 type game.
Yeah, should have.
Like, and against Oregon, heck, against Indiana, you can't throw a pick six to start the game and you can't fumble the ball out of the end zone. Like
But I think a
you
lot
just
of that,
can't do that.
Zach, I think a lot of that though is if a, what gives us the a lot more reassurance is that Indiana game is in Columbus. You're at home.
Yeah.
If you were in going to Indiana, then it'd be a lot more questionable. But I've and I don't want to segue a bit, but I was also like looking on Twitter too. Like I'm not big on Twitter, but I
Mhm.
do dabble a little bit into it. And I saw a picture. I don't know if you guys seen it. I was looking at there was this picture that's been going around from the Oregon Michigan game,
Mm.
and it was this guy who looked just like Connor Stallions,
Oh, the Stallions picture.
Oh yeah.
and I was
There's
like,
another guy on their staff. I think his name is
I
Kevin or
know,
something like that. But yeah, when I first saw it, I thought the same thing. I was like, oh my gosh.
I was like when I
Sonner
first saw
Callions. That's his name.
when I when I was like this, when I first saw it, I was like, am I am I am I seeing things? Do I?
Yep.
Oh my
Oof.
gosh. Could you imagine if they did bring him back for a game? That would be
Yeah,
if they tried to put a
that's what I was
disguise on him.
thinking. Like I was like thinking today, Jr. Literally that they were preparing for bringing him to Ohio State. You know how the audacity of that would be.
Yep.
It would not be great. It would not be great.
Who knows? They might have him working in the background, and he's just going to games right now since he's not at games. We know he was going to the Michigan State game when he wasn't at a Michigan. Well, I guess that was on a Friday night, so you never know. Who knows? He could be traveling right now looking for signs. The sign hunter. Woo!
You know what we need? We need somebody in the NCAA to catch this, to be like, all right, bring out the hammer. Let's do it.
The only problem is, Zach, we know the NCAA stinks, so they're not going to.
Amen. Preach, brother.
Preach. But the only other thing I got to say, and then I'm gonna go. Then I'm gonna leave the call, Zach.
All right.
Is JR? I was listening to Ohio podcast, which you are a host of.
Yep.
But I was like thinking to myself, if Ryan Day wins, if I stumble on my words there,
you're good.
When Ryan Day wins the rivalry game, doesn't it feel like it will be like a huge monkey will be lifted off his back?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like there's been pressure coming down on this program for, years now. And that's definitely a part of it. I would say that's probably the biggest pressure piece of it all. I think if you lose to Georgia in that fashion, but you're still beating your rival, I think the pressure to win is still there, but it's not quite as great. And then, if you even if you drop one of those like unranked games, but you're still beating your rival. I mean, think about Urban Meyer. Like everybody is longing for the Urban Meyer days. Urban Meyer wasn't perfect. I'm not trying to disparage Urban or anything like that, but it wasn't perfect. You lost to teams like Purdue and Iowa, and you had games where you slipped up all the time.
State.
Yeah, exactly. Like you had games where you slipped up quite a bit, and it was possible to, really ruin your season by just losing one game, which is incredibly frustrating. But at the end of the day, like you don't have that now with Ryan. But that was the thing, was Urban was beating the team up north. And so there's a lot forgiven when you beat that one team. And there's a lot of smaller stuff that's magnified when you're not beating that team. So in my opinion, if Ryan Day comes back and beats that team up north this year, even if he only wins one game in the playoffs, I think fans are mad, but I think fans feel a lot of pressure off of this program because he beat that team. Do you feel the same way, Zach?
I think, absolutely there's some pressure release. I do think, though, if they don't get to Indy, that's a whole nother question. Because, remember, Michigan has been the reason why they haven't been able to get to Indy the past several years. And so I think Michigan, and not just being in Indy, but winning in Indy will absolve a lot. I don't think it's just Michigan. Like, I think Michigan could be the catalyst. Now, Ohio State can't think this way because Ohio State, their primary objective, beat the team up north.
Right.
But I think doing that actually might relieve a lot of pressure for them to feel a bit more loose in Indy if they make it to Indianapolis.
So, and the reason why I asked that question is when we get the rematch with Oregon, which we are foreseeing will happen. We've been foreseeing that happen for since beginning of the year. Do you think this team will play looser than we played in Oregon?
If they have the passion, they have the juice. If you play in an Indy, I think so. As long as it continues, as long as it wasn't just one game against Penn State, I think we have to continue to see it. I don't think you'll know against Purdue and Northwestern personally. Those are I'm not trying to be disrespectful to those teams, but they're just not good.
They're crappy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's just the case of it. But what do you think, Zach?
I'll say this. I felt like there were a lot of self-inflicted wounds in this game. I did feel like Ohio State played looser this time around against Penn State than they have in the past, which is surprising because there was a lot more on the line in this Penn State game than I think in years past. Like a year ago, if they lost to Penn State, it stinks, but like they knew they had to get past Michigan. And same thing with 2022. Like you could lose to Penn State, but you had to get past Michigan. Like this year, if you lose to Penn State, like you're out. Like you're not making you're not making it to Indy, and you probably you're in danger of missing the playoff. And the reality is I thought they played looser in this game than I expected. It was, and actually, honestly, the pick six almost forced them to be loose because I thought they were a little tight, and then all of a sudden it's like they throw the pick six, and it's like, oh, now Chip's in his bag, and and I thought Jim Knowles called a good game. I don't know if it was a great game, but I thought he called a really good game, and I didn't feel like they were tight.
I agree. You got anything else, Tyler?
No, JR, just wanted to, I like your show.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for calling in. We always love to hear from you. And this time your internet connection was really good. So
thanks, Tyler.
Have a good one. All right. Thank you, Tyler, for calling in. I'm going to fix this really fast, and then we can get back to our standard layout there, Zach. So this is going to be kind of crazy here for a minute with me toying this around. Zach, we did get a few comments during that call. One of them was Billy Tuesday. He said, Will doesn't get rattled. And I think that is a huge benefit of who Will Howard is. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that goes to that tightness, that not being tight and being loose. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the huge things about Will is he doesn't get rattled, and it feels like, when he does make something bad happen or something goes wrong, feels like the team is there to embrace him and, work around it. So, we have the voice of college football. I don't know if this is Mark or not. Mark, if this is you, appreciate you being here.
Hey,
but
Mark.
He said we should all be happy. The O-line looked a complete different unit this week. Looked like a completely different unit this week. Quinshawn and Henderson at 6 yards per carry was phenomenal. Yeah, Zach, we talked about it on the Big Ten show, or the Big Ten huddle. There were people out there that were claiming Ohio State didn't run the ball very well. I don't know what in the world they saw, but this was a dominant performance by the Ohio State offensive line. You had Quinshawn Judkins running 6.8 yards per carry, and then Travion 5.4. So between the two of them, you had right about 6 yards per carry, and then you could say Will Howard was only 4 yards per carry or whatever, but it was like, yeah, because he lost 15 yards and 3 sacks. Yeah. So and your yards per carry is going to be a lot lower when you add in negative yardage and more carries.
Well, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the 4 yards per clip, it was 4.7. I think so. It was like close to 5 yards a carry.
Yeah. With
those negative plays, I think I also saw a stat. Yeah, it's 4.7. And if you take out, I think 2 kneel downs as well, you're talking about 36 carries for over 180 yards. That's over 5 yards a carry. And that's including the sacks. So I whoever is saying this nonsense that the offensive line didn't run block well, they need their eyes checked. And the pass blocking, I was listening to, I think Kings of the North, either Kings of the North or Kings of Columbus, one of their shows. I think they mentioned there were only 4 pressures allowed. And
I think there was 4 by Donovan. I'll check the PFF numbers, but I think there was 4 by Donovan and 1 by Tegra. But I'll check really
okay,
fast.
maybe
Go
it's
ahead.
1 by Tegra. But like Carson Hinsman, McLaughlin, Fryer, no pressures.
Yeah, we got to start talking about Fryer this season, Zach. Josh Fryer, he got Iron Buckeye, and man, he's been fantastic this year out there. I mean, it's like nobody's talking about him, which is a good thing because
Yeah.
people were talking about him being an issue going into the year, and now nobody's talking about him because he's doing so well blocking, right?
Yeah. He's doing well. So I think Fryer deserves a lot of kudos, but my guy, Carson Hinsman, like we've been asking for him, like, where have you been? And now I'm really asking Ryan Day, where the heck, like, why on earth is he just now playing guard? What are we doing? He was phenomenal. Like run blocking, pass blocking. Like, I don't know why this, I mean, and I think it really helped that he was next to Donovan Jackson because he's used to that. He's used to that from being on the line last year, being the center. But now that he's playing his natural position, I think it really, really helps like him. And I'm excited to see this line continue to progress together.
I am too. You know what I'm really excited for, Zach? We got Dr. Buckeye here with us. Dr. Buckeye.
Gentlemen, oh ye of little faith, gentlemen. Oh ye of little faith. I mean, I was talking to 2 downtrodden Buckeye fans last week who were packing it in, planning to pick the Nittany Lions. I believe both of these gentlemen picked the Nittany Lions to win. Come on now.
Zach,
Zach
did pick Ohio State.
I switched my pick, but you're right. I was down on him on last Monday.
I'm not going to take your Buckeye cards, gentlemen. I'm not going to take your Buckeye cards, but
thank you.
You know, I mean, well, first of all, gentlemen, don't you think that James Franklin is just going to James Franklin? I mean, come on now. How long have we been at this, guys? I mean, now, and that's not to say that I want to take anything away from our team because I think clearly the better team won. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
I want to start there. And I always want to start with that as a remark. I mean, I don't think that there was. Like I looked at the yardage totals. I know that we had about like 80 more yards than they did, probably about 6 more first downs, I think. But we lost the turnover battle 2-1, and we still won by a touchdown on their field. So, and I always felt, and I don't know how you guys felt, once we got that first drive, we got the confidence, we got it to 10-7, and then it started rolling from there. And, you know, really, I think we'll all wonder if Will Howard gets in or if that ball is like a half a yard one way or the other, or goes out at the 1 yard line even, you know, and we go up 21-10 there, it totally changes the structure of that game and the way it goes. Yeah. But I mean, the biggest thing for me, what gave me confidence is I thought about it as the week goes along. And I want to harken back to something I told you guys last week is I just thought we could defend this team really well. Nothing about Penn State worried me offensively other than maybe Warren, you know, unless Warren went postal and had some kind of incredible game. No, I mean, like I thought we can contain Allen and Singleton. And you know what, you guys kind of talked about this on the stream last night. I saw the stream, by the way. Good job.
Thank you.
You know, I'm hearing some people say that Drew Aller's bad. Yeah, good job, guys. That Drew Aller's bad. Drew Aller's not bad. Nobody at receiver. He's got us 3 at wide receiver right now. I mean, seriously. I mean, somebody's got, you know, seriously, somebody watch that all 22 film and tell me if you're seeing a lot of receivers getting open and getting separation. Because I guarantee you it's not like, well, Aller missed this open guy. He missed that open guy. And, you know, he was, you know, just, you know, all over the place. I mean, imagine if he had what Clifford had, if he had a Hamler or he had a Dotson, he'd be doing some business, you know?
Yep.
But
well, yeah,
I don't know what you guys' thoughts, but I'll let you kind of.
Yeah, he hit that wide receiver on the hands in the end zone, and then it just bounced off of his hands and right into Davis and Igbenogsen's hands, right? I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Iggy. He made a really good play there, getting the pick and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was a really tough catch, but still, like, it hits you in the hands. You got to catch it,
Yeah. Well, and
Right.
even to that point, the catches by the tight end, by Warren and by the receivers were often tightly contested.
Mm-hmm.
And so there just wasn't,
Yes.
they were great
point.
throws. Like they were great throws. So
Yes.
like I saw, this is to your point. I saw College Football Nerds who I really respect, but they were like, Aller's just a guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think you pin that on Aller. Like Aller did everything he could, but like the reality was like these receivers who I think, they're a little bit better than a year ago, but that's not saying much. And I think you're absolutely right. Like those receivers need to step up, and they did not step up. And I think that's a credit to the corners, but also I think it's an indictment on Penn State's receivers.
Well, let's just flip it, guys. I mean, bottom line, if we gave him what we have, if he had a Mekik Buka and Jeremiah Smith, you don't think Drew Aller would throw for a lot of touchdown passes?
For sure.
I mean, let's just be real here. He would. He would. It wouldn't be like, oh, he'd be terrible still, even if he had Jeremiah Smith and a Mekik Buka. I mean, I don't think he'd be awful. I mean, and like I said, seriously. I mean, let's be fair. I mean, sometimes the receivers make the quarterback. I mean, how many times have we seen that in college football? So
That's true.
I mean, I thought that, kind of as the game unfolded, by the way, the Iggy pick was absolutely huge. I think just from a psychological advantage, if Penn State gets the lead at halftime, I think that really would have affected the team negatively, considering how bad we were, outplaying them, to that point, I think, too. Don't you think that, I mean, like on the list of plays, like if you're ranking like top 5 or 6 plays in the game, that's got to be like really near the top. I don't know what if you guys already listed that as like one of your most important plays.
Oh man, I think the Iggy pick was definitely huge. Man, I mean, I think the Iggy pick, but I know I said it with Tyler too. I thought the Emeka touchdown after the pick six was massive, like just getting back on track. But yeah, I think the Iggy pick was huge.
Yeah. I think that there definitely would have been, a bit of a demoralizing factor if they did get that touchdown pass, and it would have been really tough on Iggy, especially with some of the heat that he's taken and stuff like that. And there was rumors coming out that he was in practice with like oven mitts on or whatever, so that way he couldn't grab which having practiced every single time with oven mitts on, he played fantastic against Penn State. So but yeah, I think that could have been a little difficult, but I don't know, like there was just so much talk after the game about how they were going to will themselves to victory no matter what. It's like I think it could have been down, and we probably would have had much more of a dogfight, but I feel like they still would have found a way. That just felt like a team after the game with everything they were saying and the emotion they had on the field, that it was like, yeah, this team wasn't losing today.
Sorry, I
agree. No, go ahead.
I missed the second part of your question, and so I answered it. I think I really agree with what you're saying, JR. I think there's something about Will Howard too, like, and I think it's because I was thinking about this with the touchdown to Emeka.
Yeah,
I think they would have been down, but like especially because they were getting the ball back, I really felt confident that Howard would lead them. Just the way he was playing after that, like I was like, oh, like he just keeps coming back. And I think I felt that way against Oregon too. Like, I mean, he came up obviously just short. But I think there's an unflappableness to him. Like he's not afraid to make a mistake. And he's also like, he just gets right back up. And so like, I think to your point, I think Iggy might've been struggling, but I think he has a confidence about him too, where he's like, I don't really care. I'm just going to play the next snap. I think Denzel gets more in his own head than Iggy does.
Right. Well, I was just going to say, do you guys always set like an over under with him at like 2 penalties per game? Because I'm always thinking like every game I'm going to get at least 2 penalties because he's so damn handsy. There's either going to be like a holding and a PI, or I'm just like maybe one we can live with, but like 2 or more, I don't. You know what I mean? And of course, depending on the time of game.
Didn't they put like oven mitts on him or something in practice to like get him to stop holding?
That was the rumor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I tell you what, I was one of those fans that also wanted to see more of Jermaine Matthews too. See that the big thing. I mean, well, I was always, there was like 3 guys, and most Buckeye fans were talking about it on defense: Jermaine Matthews, Arvell Reese, and then the man that on that goal line stand, Caden McDonald.
Yep.
Everybody was wanting to see him play. And that's the other thing too, is I still think the future of our defense next year is still going to be bright because of kind of these younger guys. I think it was, like we've talked about, and most Ohio State fans have talked about, it would only help their development and, get them a jump start into next year if they could get more snaps in games. And I think Dave, from even time to time, from the blowout games, doesn't even play him enough. I know that's probably been taught. You guys have probably broached that subject, but like even against the Maction teams, he could play those guys, I think, more snaps, particularly in the second half and into the fourth quarter.
Yeah. He's done a better job of it this year, but you're right. He doesn't. I mean, and I think that was part of even our frustration with the D-line rotation. It's like, why are JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, like, they're great. They're really good players, but why are you having them out there for 60 snaps a game? And I think this game was a really good rotation. And I don't know if you saw Caden McDonald's his Twitter afterwards, but he posted a picture of a Big Mac.
The Big Mac.
And I'm like, that nickname's gonna stick. You are the Big Mac, and you're clogging holes rather than clogging arteries. I like it. So.
There you go. Loving it. I'm loving it, as they would say. Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy. The biggest thing, one of the big takeaways for me too, is and I think the thing that this team was really sold on at the beginning of the year that I was going to be encouraged about was that we were going to get back to having a balanced offense. That we've got these great receivers and we're going to be able to throw the football. But I don't know. Ever since 2019. And 2019 is obviously the ultimate example of balance. I mean, you can get no better example of balance than 2019. I mean, when you have Fields throwing for 40 touchdowns and a running back going for 2,000 yards, that's like the greatest balance in the history of balance. But like, as far as a team that can run it and throw it. But I didn't think we would get to that level this year. But I thought we would get back to as close a level of an offense that can just be really good at running it and really good at throwing it combined and be that offense. I think just finding our run game, getting back to the run game. For me,
the run game is a huge part of this offense. If you don't have it going, I mean, I really like Will Howard, but let's just be honest, he is not the type of quarterback who's going to throw it 50 times a game when your run game isn't working. Which that's fine. I don't think we need him to be that. And so that's one of the reasons why I felt like the O-line was so imperative, is because you knew if this O-line wasn't blocking, yes, Quinshon and Travion would still get yards, but it wouldn't be consistent enough that, you would be able to, kind of lean on that, especially at the end of the game. But turns out at the end of the game, what was it, 11 straight run plays in 5 minutes? That was huge.
Yeah.
And the fact that they could use both backs. Like,
yes.
I think, like, obviously Quinshon is like your battering ram, but I liked seeing, like, I felt like Travion got back to what we saw earlier in the season in this game. I thought Oregon and Nebraska, I thought Travion, like, he kind of reverted a little bit to like being more finesse. And I thought in this game, he was like, he put his head down. He ran behind his pads better. He also,
and he was blocking too.
Yeah.
And he was hitting some dudes.
I think I'm most angry that Will Howard fumbled on the goal line because of the freaking block that Henderson.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing was, it was a it was a thing of beauty.
Well,
And then all of a sudden he fumbles. And I'm like, no.
Well, the Junkins block in the last 5 minutes when we on his quarterback run was awesome too, and I always thought Junkins was huge. I mean, it's an obvious huge thing to have him because we know Henderson's injury issues the last couple years. You know what I mean? And to have the 1-2 combination is just ideal, obviously. And I mean, I want to say, too, this is a bounce back game. We talked about it last week, guys, for Chip Kelly. You know, I was a little, some with the play calling in the Nebraska game. I mean, lost amid Zen's struggles at tackle and the offensive line not being great I think he was kind of at his worst, too. I mean, I did not like some of the play calling in that game. And I just thought Chip really kind of getting in his bag. Again, the perimeter run, I kind of talked about that with you guys last week. I love the fact that he got Quinshon to the outside. Like that first drive, you notice that little pitch play. Would Jenkins get like 25, 30 yards to get him to like the 30 on that play? I thought that was huge. I thought the touchdown pass was a great call, design play to Emeka. So I don't know what your thoughts on him.
They would run that with tight ends in the past. I forget who it was. I think it was against Notre Dame. Was it CJ Stroud's second year where they ran that at the end of the first drive as well? And so I thought that was a neat little wrinkle was to see him do that with Emeka instead. But yeah, I mean, the receivers didn't have great numbers in this game. Jeremiah Smith still had more yards than the entire Penn State wide receiver room together in that game. But Jeremiah Smith, he would have had even more yards if he had caught that deep ball. It's all good. I guess he lost it in the sun or something. Who knows? But at the end of the day, you did what you had to do, and Emeka was there. But I was really, really, really glad to see that touchdown catch by Brandon Inniss there in that part. That was nice. Really, really cool to see.
Yeah. It was fun to see that, they're rotating receivers a little bit, which is
right.
Yeah, which I think is great because I think Inniss has a really bright future. And so getting him valuable reps in big games, I think is great.
Yeah, I mean, I still think a trio next year of Smith, Inniss, and Tate's going to be really good. So I mean, I still think that's going to be really good. I kind of like moving forward, guys. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I know Indiana's coming up down the road. By the way, I think we realize kind of what Penn State is, just real quick. They are what they are, which I think is a solid top 8 to 10 football team. And that's about it. I mean, I never thought that I thought their ranking was a little bit, inflated. And that's, again, another reason that I had confidence going into this game. But, like, if they make the playoff and win a playoff game, basically get to the quarterfinals, I think that's basically what they are, is a top 8 team.
Yep.
Maybe 10 team.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was watching someone was talking about this on Twitter, and I thought it was interesting that all the top teams in the Sagarin ratings are down compared like across college football. And so like Penn State's ranked 10th and they're an 86.48 ranking and Georgia is a 92. I think traditionally your top 3 or 4 teams are like in the high 90s to 100s.
Right.
And so they were even saying that Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon this year would be like 14-point dogs to 2019 Ohio State.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that you say here's my connection to what you're saying is it's interesting because I thought Penn State had a better chance this year because I think you're right. I think typically they are a top 8 to 10 team, but I'm like, there's so much parity in the top 10 this year.
Good point.
And I was like, I don't know, but I think what this game proved, I think Ohio State's top end is far, far superior to Penn State. And I don't mean that with any disrespect to Penn State, but the reality is if Ohio State plays any semblance of a clean game, this is a 20 to 30 point blowout.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say somewhere in that area. I could see that. I think that just shows that there's still that gap between if you're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country or if you're 8 to 10.
Yeah.
Maybe there is still that gap. And you think like, well, there wouldn't be, that doesn't seem like a huge gap, but there still is that gap.
Yep.
So
if we were doing
I
a
mean,
tiered system, like the top
mhm.
3 or 4 teams would be in their own tier, and then there'd be another tier of that. Now it's a little bit closer than it has been in the past, but I mean Penn State, they were undefeated and stuff, but I mean we knew this Penn State team. I mean, I don't want to talk too bad about them or anything, because I do think they're a good team. But
Right.
we knew this team was limited in some areas, right? I
Mhm.
mean, we saw
Right.
against USC, they only scored 6 points in the first half. We saw the struggle against Bowling Green and stuff like that. I mean, if
Right.
this was a game that was at Ohio State, I probably wouldn't have been nearly as nervous for it. But I mean,
Yeah.
you knew the pressure that James Franklin had and how much those fans wanted to win. And I did feel like Andy Kotelnicki was a really good hire for them. And I still think he is. It just sounds like Jim Knowles has his number.
Yeah.
with
No,
being able to call against him.
Well, think about it. What's really the difference between this year's game and last year's game? Think of it, basically ends up being about the same score, because we essentially won that game by 2 touchdowns. They scored a meaningless touchdown at the end, and what it was ended up being, what I think was 20-12 last year at home with Honda.
Yeah.
And I thought they had a much better defense, and I said that last year than they did this year. And I mean, Marvin really saved that game too. I mean, you remember he had a great game and kind of
I
bailed
was
out.
thinking about that game, David.
Yeah.
You tell me what your thoughts here, okay? So I know I'm kind of coming on you here a little bit by surprise, but so Honda McCord last year, he had the fumble in the pocket. Yeah, I know, Zach. I know you love that nickname. He had the fumble in the pocket, but it was holding on Penn State secondary, so that brought that back. Remember, that would have been a touchdown for Penn State.
It's a big play. Yeah.
And they would have had the lead there.
Mhm.
I'll be honest. I don't think Ohio State would have come back from that last year. If Penn State would have got the lead off that fumble, taking it back for a touchdown, I don't think Ohio State would have come back from that this year. But this year, Will Howard throws a pick six. It's 10-0, and you see the resilience of this team this year compared to last year. I don't know if you feel the same way, but that's how I felt about it.
Yeah, I mean, I said coming into the year that I thought Howard only needed to be a slight upgrade over Honda. I don't think he needed to be a major upgrade, because I thought the all-around football team around him was also better than we had last year. I mean, to be fair to Honda last year, actually, when we played Penn State last year, remember, Emeka and Henderson didn't play that game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
People forget that Emeka and Henderson did not play that game. That was why it was pretty much just throw it up to Marvin. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, Cade Stover, I think, made a couple nice plays in that game too.
He had
but
the posterizing catch over
yeah,
the middle.
Yeah, on that like a helmet kind of catch, I think it was, or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and to be fair, he did miss those guys, I think, for part of the season last year. And the thing with Honda was just always his inconsistency. Too much good quarter, bad quarter, good half, bad half.
Right.
And now I do think, I will say this with Howard. I think every Buckeye fan just feels, and I still feel, that if Howard just played a clean game and didn't turn it over, I still don't know if there's a team that can beat us. And I've said that just because I think the defense is good enough, and now that I think we've reasserted ourselves with the running game, it makes me that much more confident that, if he just plays clean. Because remember, there was a key turnover in the now he didn't have the turnover. I guess that the turnover we had against Oregon was the Junkins fumble. But
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what you saw with Howard against Oregon is probably the best you're going to see out of him. Maybe minus the slipping down for the sack and stuff like that. I don't think you're gonna get that every time. But if you get that kind of Will Howard against these big game teams, that's enough to win. Which, if we're being honest, it was enough to beat Oregon at Oregon. Just it was 1 second too late. You know what I'm saying? Like, just if he would have slid 1 second earlier, probably would have got it. Now, I would contend he probably did slide on time, and, they just didn't review it because all the students were on the field. But, that's what the referees did, so I'm not going to be a baby about it. But I think that there was a possibility there of getting a field goal off and winning the game.
Well, to be fair, I don't know if I would have trusted fielding, guys, but that's
good point.
I don't know.
How about Jaden Fielding though in this game? Hit a 46-yard field goal.
He did. Yeah, that was like a sneak in though. I mean, it was close.
The 46 one was right down the middle. The 39-yard one, that was
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was like that close. Well, see that always like begged my question is like because they were so aggressive on that last drive against Oregon, throwing it to Smith, you know what I mean? They must have thought they needed to make it like a near an extra point, you know what I mean, basically to trust him. And that's what I was kind of asking Mark after that game was over with is like if we do look at a playoff game down the road, where are we comfortable with this guy from?
Yeah.
I'm not saying we hope it doesn't come down to that, but like I said, as these teams become closer and closer, it could,
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's
I mean,
a good thought.
what is your thought going forward? I just want to kind of, final thought on maybe what you think about the team going forward. I mean, I've got a lot of confidence. Obviously we've got a couple warm ups here with Purdue and Northwestern. I mean, I think Indiana can cause some real problems though. At least to our defense. I don't know. I don't know if they can stop us offensively, especially now that we've kind of got maybe a little bit of our mojo back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go and then I'll let you
Yeah.
go, Zach. I think this is the most talented team in the country. I think they just need to play like it. I think against Northwestern and Purdue, it's going to be imperative. Get up early and let the backups take it in the second half. Get the defensive line a bunch of snaps in the second half. Get your Jermaine Matthews and Calvin Simpson-Hunt a bunch of snaps in the second half, and just kind of let your guys roll and get into that Indiana game. I'm with you. I believe in Indiana this year. I think Indiana has a case to be a top 5 team, honestly. Like if I was doing top 25, I might give them the top 5 spot. Now they don't have the win to get them there, but they do have the dominance game in and game out, and you still saw them beat a team by 2 scores even with their backup quarterback. So obviously it's not just all one quarterback, and I do think their defensive line is better than people give them credit for. We'll see against a very good Ohio State team that's probably more talented. Not probably, they are more talented than them. So we'll see how it goes there. But at the end of the day, this IU game, it's kind of tricky because I do think if Ohio State wins, it's a really good win. But we all know if Ohio State loses, everybody's going to say, oh, you lost to Indiana. Or if Ohio State wins, they're going to say, oh, well, Indiana wasn't that good. It wasn't that big of a win. It's just, that's how it goes.
They downplay every Ohio State victory pretty much. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. But we're rooting for them to blow out Michigan. So,
well, yeah, dude, I want our pound of flesh so bad. So bad. I'm talking Woody go for 3, like 60 burger. Dude, I want that thing. Like, I just want that to be like the worst blowout in the history of blowouts. So bad.
Just go for 2 every time.
Exactly. Onside, kick it. I'm talking bombs all over the place. I mean, we have to get our pound of flesh. Yeah.
Jeremiah Smith gets 5 touchdowns.
Yes.
Emeka gets 5 touchdowns.
300 yards rushing. Yeah. Yes. All of it. Yeah. 3 pick sixes. Yeah. So what do you think? Probably 2 or 3 in the polls, or does it matter or in these rankings? I think they're probably 3, but.
Well, here's my question. Are they doing it like projecting out who the conference champions will be? Because if they're doing
they're just doing rankings.
They're just doing rankings.
25. Yeah.
Okay. Then I would say
it's the same as last year.
I would imagine because of SEC bias, they will be 3 and not 2, which is dumb.
It is. I mean, it's the SEC, and I have some whatever towards the SEC. But I was talking about this with Mark on Sunday. Like after Georgia, and Georgia's got their own problems, by the way. I don't think this is the Georgia teams of a couple years ago. I don't even know if it's a Georgia team of last year, especially with Beck throwing the ball to the other team. But I just think there's kind of like a lot of mediocre in the SEC this year. A lot of like this isn't the best version of Alabama we've seen. This is not a really good LSU team, I don't think. I mean, I don't know. Ole Miss.
So people in the Big Ten huddle were commenting about this yesterday, and to your point, like, oh, Vanderbilt's looked good. They lost to freaking Georgia State.
Yes.
They don't get it. They should not be in the AP poll. They struggled against freaking Auburn. They're not good.
Right.
I'm tired of this idea that maybe they're good. Listen, don't struggle with Auburn. Don't lose to Georgia State. Get them out of the poll.
Is that
Sorry, go ahead.
Is that Mark Feinbaum in the chat right there? Is that Mark Feinbaum in the chat? I'm kidding. You've got much nicer hair, Mark.
That's true. He does. He does.
No, but I'm just saying maybe it's because some of these upper tier SEC teams, we aren't seeing the best version of them. And I think there are some teams that have kind of disappointed a little bit. Maybe this, I don't know. It doesn't look like your older brother's SEC. I don't think. I mean,
no, it's, I would agree. I mean, I think even Tennessee struggled with several teams, including Kentucky. Like I think it's not nearly as good of a conference as it has been in the past.
Yeah. I'll just say this, and then David will get your final thought. Okay.
Okay. Sure.
Everybody can pay players now. I'll just say that.
That's true. So you're of the opinion that the NIL has kind of leveled the field that much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I do think that you still have to recruit at a high level, and you still see the teams that recruit at a high level, like Ohio State, like Georgia, always being near the pack. I still look at the NIL as a little bit like NFL free agency, that you get that player or two, kind of like we did, to kind of fill a hole here or fill a hole there. Mm-hmm. And that the recruiting is still like the NFL draft. You build a majority of your roster with that, and then you use the portal or NIL to get that one or two like missing pieces. Although more teams have gone totally wild with the portal this year. See, that's one thing I'll say about Indiana. Let's see next year, and I'll say this about Cignetti, and I know he says check my record and all that stuff, but I do want to see if he can do it 2 years in a row at Indiana, because that roster is going to totally flip over next year.
Yep.
I saw a writer today say that Ohio State should fire Ryan Day and hire Kirk Cignetti, and I was like,
please.
Seems a little quick to me.
Yeah. Dude, everybody wants Cignetti. He's like the hot name, like the Iowa State coach was a few years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, great show, guys. Let's get back together again next week.
Let's do it.
OH.
IO.
Thanks, David.
Take care.
All right, good stuff there, Zach. Well, that was all the callers we have, so I think we'll talk for a few more minutes and give somebody else a chance to call in if they'd like to. And if we don't get any callers here in a few more minutes, then I think we can probably head out, Zach. I did want to ask your opinion before we get out of here today. Uh-oh. Do you think that Ohio State has a legit shot to be the number 2 team in the college football playoff rankings, or do you think it's just SEC bias, it's going to happen, don't get your hopes up?
Well, as much as I've railed on the SEC in this show, I do think Georgia has a legitimate argument to be the number 2 team over Ohio State. And it's because they have a win over Clemson, who was, again, looked bad, but they are ranked. And they beat them bad. They beat them by 4 touchdowns. And they also have a win over Texas. So do I think Ohio State has a legitimate argument to be number 2? Yes. I think Georgia, though, probably has the better resume. And I think there is a little bit of SEC bias. I think Mark was commenting in the chat that SEC is the best conference top to bottom. I would agree with that. I just don't think it's nearly as pronounced as it has been in years past. And I think the Big Ten, especially in the top half, I think would have something to say about it. I mean, USC had something to say about it week 1. So,
yeah. I think for me the biggest thing is, for years we heard, the SEC wins the championships. The SEC, this, that, and the other. Well, that narrative is going to flip pretty quick if Oregon or Ohio State wins the national championship this year, because it's going to go from, well, okay, you're just a top-heavy conference, and all these middle-of-the-pack teams are elite in the SEC, and it's like, okay, your tone changed there pretty quick. So let's remain consistent with how we're talking about this. I'm not necessarily saying that you can't talk about the middle-of-the-pack teams. I do think that the middle-of-the-pack teams are important to talk about, but if you're going to talk about the full conference overall, if you only talk about the top end one year, but then it doesn't work out for you the next year, you have to be consistent. You have to actually talk about the entire conference the entire time and not just when it suits you best.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I tend to believe that Georgia's probably going to be ranked second. I want Ohio State to be ranked second, but I think Georgia's going to get credit for that Clemson win, even though I don't think they really deserve all that much credit. I think Clemson dropped out of the top 20 after losing to Louisville. I don't know how Louisville isn't ahead of them. I think Louisville's 25 and they're 23. I don't know how Louisville's not ahead of them, but it just is what it is. And so they beat Texas, and even though Ohio State beat Penn State, they're probably going to use it as, well, Penn State's not as good as Texas and yada, yada, yada. But it is what it is. So now if they do rank them second, that'll be pretty impressive, but we'll see.
Yeah, I tend to think Georgia's going to get the nod. And I think you can make a strong case. I think your case for Ohio State is valid. I just
think if you watch the two teams play, you know what I'm saying? Like, watch the two teams play. Georgia struggled against Kentucky. Georgia struggled against Mississippi State. Georgia just struggled against Florida. Like, if they were struggling against South Carolina and that vaunted defensive line, okay, I can see that. If they struggled against, I don't know, Vanderbilt, because everybody struggled with them this year, at least they have the consistency of Vanderbilt beating some good teams and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even with the Georgia State loss, I could see that. But this is a team in Florida that, I mean, yes, they had DJ Lagway, but as soon as DJ Lagway went out, that game was over, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in Mississippi State got blown out by Toledo. What are we talking about here? These are teams that
bad teams.
Yes, you kind of trip up and have a bad game one time. We understand, but I think you watch Georgia play and you realize Carson Beck's not all that good. The offensive line is good, but it's not like this out of this world offensive line that nobody can go up against and stuff. The defense is vaunted. This defense is very, very good, I feel like, and Kirby Smart has done a great job in big games with them, but maybe not so much against Alabama in the first half, but they figured it out later on. So to me, it's like, you have to look at the entire season overall and not just when you want to pick and choose and be like, oh, well, they beat Texas really well. Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Georgia has a Brock Bowers problem.
Yeah.
Like they lost Brock Bowers, and he was a generational prospect at tight end. Yeah. And he's gone. And they don't have anybody to replace that production.
Yeah, you're right. All right, Zach, no more callers. And it starts at 10 o'clock. The Buckeyes play basketball. So if you Buckeye fans want to watch some Buckeye basketball, go ahead and turn on over to TNT. And Ohio State has a big game against Texas tonight, so that's going to be fun. Do you have a score prediction, Zach? Score prediction for Ohio State versus Texas at Vegas, not Vegas. A home or away game.
So I don't know much about basketball, I'll be honest, but I'll go 78-71 Ohio State.
There we go. I love it.
What's your score prediction?
Happens, 75-70.
Okay. So I'm not too far off.
I secretly think Texas will win, but I just picked against Ohio State in football, so I feel like I have to pick Ohio State now in basketball, especially since they won. So
there you go.
All right, everybody. We will do this again next week, Monday night at 9 o'clock. Appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate David and Tyler calling in, having some good discussion there. And the people in the chat, thank you so much for, talking and all that stuff. And, we didn't really use the chat much tonight, but it really helps when there are no callers for Zach and I to kind of bounce things off of you all and talk with you all. So great night. Great show, Zach. And everybody, we'll see you next time. Have a good one.